As we think about this last year, I just want to give a moment of gratitude for those who are rolling off as elders and deacons. That is always one of the things I am so grateful for, when people have given their time in service. But there is something that these folks had not thought about when they said yes, and that was signing up to do this service when the pandemic was going to start. That nobody really thought, I'm gonna lead a church, or I'm gonna try to do service and care and outreach. And people did not foresee March of 2020 coming. And this, I just want to give a huge thank you to the folks who have been serving for the last few years in these roles, because it has not been easy, and you have done such great, faithful work. So thank you for being the church. We are only the church when we are the church together. As we know that this is still, last year we did this meeting, we did it on Zoom, and we were hoping that this would be in person, and I'm so grateful that we are in person this year. We also know that there are still some people for whom in person is not yet a place they're comfortable at. We're recording this, we're going to have it live for people, or have it available for people. We know that we're going to still figure out what our new normal is, and a lot of this year is going to be that. But this church is healthy, and it is alive, and I am incredibly hopeful and excited about what is being uncovered as we are slowly coming out from our lockdown in the pandemic and what we're learning from it. I don't think we know everything that we have fully learned, but we're still asking questions and we're still learning. And so I'm grateful to be the church with you in this place, in this moment. And that is because the church isn't just staff leading a church or a pastor leading the church. It is us being the church together. And I'm grateful to be the church with you. So I just want to say thank you. This has been a wonderful place, particularly just saying this personally, to serve and to be with you in this. And as we now look forward to the coming years, I'm going to bring up Malcolm McClellan. All right, and then Tom Bond, you are up after. Oh, no, sorry, I just jumped ahead. You're not up. I'm looking at my slides instead of I'm sorry, Steve. Actually, and I'm going to give you a little intro, Steve, if that's okay.
Sure.
So Steve has served as a deacon and is one of our deacon team leaders. And at one of our meetings that we were outside, this is something Steve got up and read, and it's something that has stuck with me, just touched me, and I've shared it with other people. And so ask Steve to come and just share his reflection that he gave with the deacons for you today.
This is a good day. It's a great day to say thank you to the deacons that have served their term, and welcome to the new deacons. And what I read talked a little bit about what we do as deacons at our team meeting, but specifically about the work we do to stay in contact with the people of the church community. And staying in touch with our church community is one of the most important ways we serve as deacons, and this has been more important than ever during the pandemic. Whether through phone calls, emails, cards, or just saying hello after a church service, these contacts help keep our church family connected. And I came to a deeper understanding of what this means one night as I was doing church lockup. And for those who don't know, each night after everyone has left, a church member walks through and around the church building, turning off lights, checking doors and windows, kitchen stoves, fire alarms. And most often it's not necessary. everyone usually does a good job of closing up when they leave. But once in a while, I find myself, when I'm doing lockup, shutting a window, locking a classroom door, turning on a light, turning off a dripping sink, noting that a rain gutter needs repair. I've also found walking through our church at night when it's quiet and empty to be a meditative and spiritual experience. It's a good time for prayer. It's a good time to think about the people of our church. And our deacon contacts are something like that. We're checking in, we're seeing that all is well, we're listening and praying when it's not. We're letting the people of our church family know that they're remembered and prayed for and loved. Thank you, deacons.
So, hello everybody. I'm Malcolm McClellan. I am one of the members of the Personnel Committee. And the Personnel Committee consists of myself, our three pastors, Christy, Lindsay, and Dan, Barbara Jerza, Susie Stenberg, and Irene Peters. And what our job is to take care of our staff and look out after them. And what we did, the Personnel Committee, for this coming budget season is we recommended a cost of living adjustment of 6.5% for all of our staff. That was put forward into the budget that the session approved. And now it is coming forward to bring a motion to you as a congregation of recommending a cost of living adjustment for our two installed pastors of 6.5%. So that is what the Personnel Committee is bringing forward today for the congregation to vote on. Are there any questions? I would be happy to answer any questions about this, if anybody should have any. Yes, go ahead. Sure. So the question is, with this cost of living adjustment, how are we in terms of the market? We are adjusting to where the purpose of the cost of living is to stay, at least with regard to the cost of living in this community. I think our salaries for our staff, in comparison to other the salaries of our installed pastors in relation to other churches, we are competitive. My view, we can always do better, but at least the cost of living adjustment makes sure that as inflation is coming into our Puget Sound community, we are at least staying even for our pastors in terms of the buying power of their salaries. Any other questions? Okay, Christy, do I turn it back to you for the vote, or should I do the vote?
All right. And there were no other questions for Malcolm. All in favor of the motion from the Personnel Committee to give cost of living adjustment of 6.5% to the installed pastors, say aye. Aye. All opposed, say nay. Anyone abstained, say abstained. All right, that motion passes, and now I invite up Tom Bond. Yeah, and I'm going to run your slides for you.
Okay. I think otherwise I'll cut my back to the congregation. I would prefer not to do that. So while Christy gets set up, I'm Tom Bond, a member of the Finance Committee. Joining me on that committee is Dave Williamson, Julie Stillman, and Andrew Mosier. Christy sits in all the meetings, and of course our Director of Finance, currently Stacy B. Arneson. So before we jump into the actual numbers, all of the numbers you'll see in the presentations are in thousands of dollars. So just keep that in mind when you look at the numbers. Go ahead, first slide. So 2021 results. Next slide. So you'll see The budget is in blue, actual is in orange. You'll see on income, we finished just $2,000 shy of budget, which doesn't mean we're smart budgeters, it just means we're lucky. We finished $72,000 less on expenses, which is not unusual to come in less than budgeted expenses. So $2,000 short on income, $72,000 less on expenses, caused a positive $70,000 swing on the bottom line, moving us from a budgeted loss to an actual positive cash flow at the end of the year. So if you look at income, pledges came in substantially at budget, $931,000 versus $938,000, and other income was nominally higher than budget at $123,000 versus $118,000. But as you'll see later in the presentation, the composition of the other income came in a way that was fairly dramatically different than we anticipated. That's not that unusual, but we'll show you how that happened. But let's first talk more about expenses. We had $23,000 savings in personnel. A good part of that was lower utilization of part-time staff due to so much of the year not having in-person worship. You know, you're not paying for an organist, you're not paying for audiovisual support. The building is being used less, so you're paying for fewer people to maintain the building. And there was also savings. We always budget professional continuing development, continuing professional education expenses for pastors, and those two were less than anticipated. Next slide. The next largest category was buildings and grounds, and by the year, the biggest swings every year are going to be in personnel and buildings and grounds, because that's where most of the money is in the budget. So buildings and grounds, we had property tax savings, thanks to some just terrific work on Dave Williamson's part, and knock on wood, he's going to be able to deliver even greater savings in future years. We're just kind of hung up in the process right now, but we were able to make a fairly substantial cut in those. Preschool, if we go back one, preschool ran summer camps. Preschool contributes to the church budget when they use the facility. So that resulted in a bit more income to the church than was anticipated in the budget, and reduced janitorial expenses. Notwithstanding the summer camps, the facility is being used less for other rentals. Administration, lower usage of office equipment, so copiers, paper, and things like that. We also replaced fewer computers than we initially anticipated for the year. Per capita, next slide. Presbytery, in the kindness of their heart, waived 3 months of per capita. We don't do very well in recovering per capita through member donations, so this is really nice to see that we're able to save $8,000 there. And then finally, the smallest slice was $6,000, which we'll just call everything else. We had nominal savings in some other areas that were offset by nominal overages in some areas. So we look at the 2022 budget. Next slide. We're budgeting a 2% increase in income, but a 15% increase in expenses, and we're going to get more into both income and expenses in a moment. When we experience savings to budget on expenses, we don't automatically assume that those are going to be recurring savings in following years. So something like property taxes, we can make that assumption going into the next year. But in other areas, it could just be the grace of God that caused us to spend less on utilities and other things like that. And our staff tend to be fairly conservative in their budgets, as evidenced by history. So, you know, if a typical business was putting this up, it would raise some questions from the board of directors, what's going on? And so we're going to explain some of that, what's going on to you. But that would cause the bottom line to go from a positive 18,000 to a loss of 117, I think that number says. We have had larger budgeted operating losses. We've never actually had an actual loss even approaching that number. So if we jump to the next slide, let's talk about stewardship first. We had 190 households that pledged in 2021. As of this moment, 154 of those 190 have made a pledge in 2022. 31 have not yet pledged. 31 is a larger number than it was at this point last year in stewardship. And then we had 5 households that left MIPC. Those are typically associated with moving outside the area. Next slide. So far we have had 160 households that have pledged for 2022. Almost half of them pledged the same amount that they did in 2021. We're really happy with the fact that 57 of them increased their pledge over 2021. 21 decreased, and 6 of the folks were new pledgers to the church. So let's go back to the 21 budget and look at it in a bit more detail, because we'll then compare it to the 21 actual and then compare that to the 2022 budget. So pledges received to date at this point last year at the annual meeting were close to $950,000. There were, as there are this year, a group of households that had been historical pledgers that had not pledged at that point in the year. And our staff reach out to those people in a very gentle, caring way to see whether they do plan on pledging. But that had not yet taken place, and we put $10,000 in the budget to get a gross pledge income of $957. And when I say realization rate, historically, we've collected about 98% of the pledges that are made. So we made that assumption to come up with $938, $110,000 in non-pledge income, $8,000 in other, for a total of $1,056,000. Next slide. Compare that to actual. You'll see that just the $7,000 difference on non-pledge, rather pledge income, a fairly big difference in non-pledge income, and the big difference, we had a non-recurring special gift from one household of $50,000. Now, when we say non-recurring, we're not saying we don't hope that recurs. We're saying it was not a recurring gift. This wasn't something that had happened over even a 2-year span. It was something that happened from a household just in 2021. So that yields the $2,000 shortfall. Thanks, Christy. Next slide. And then the 2022 budget, you'll see, I mentioned that we had a lot more people at this point this year that are historical pledgers that have not yet pledged. Their pledges, obviously, collectively, are larger than the group was last year. We are not assuming that all of those households will pledge, but we know enough from history that the pastors and the director of finance can look at those households and make an educated guess with respect to which households are likely to come forward and make a pledge. Nothing guaranteed, but an educated guess. And so you'll see a much larger number this year of 91,000. I think that's the largest number that we have assumed in an income budget. We have had numbers in the $50,000 range, but I don't recall one quite that large. Same realization rate, rounds roughly to $1 million in net pledge income. We took non-pledge income down in the budget to be more approximate to what we actually experienced last year. Other income is $16,000 for the budget that we previously presented. Next slide. So let's talk about the expense increases in the same way that we looked at the expense savings last year, and in many ways they are the corollary of the expense savings that we had last year. So now that we're back into in-person worship services, we would expect that return to more normal operations would result in more part-time labor expenses of $37,000. And as Malcolm just talked about, we approved a cost of living adjustment, not just for pastors, but staff as well, that accounts for $45,000. Next slide. Building and grounds. Again, sprinkler testing is not something that is done annually, but is scheduled under code for 2022 for $7,000. A lot of the other expenses you'll see, again, are related to a greater use of the facility. We are still not budgeting much of anything in the way of facility income, however, so we don't have that offset yet. Next slide, or rather, administration. Lots of small expenses that add up to $13,000. And then all other is roughly divided between higher worship expenses and to the extent that food is brought back to the morning service, the 8:30 service, we would expect some hospitality expenses that we didn't experience last year. Next slide is just a repeat of the first slide for the 2022 budget. So let's talk about the operating loss. And if we could go to and just stay there for a moment, if you will. When you look at an operating loss like that, when I share this next information, I'm not sharing it for you to walk away from this conversation with a "don't worry, be happy," right? Don't worry your pretty little heads. But I also don't want you to walk away in any sort of alarmed way. I think history has a way of repeating itself in many cases, and that's why we wanted to share with you some of our historical budgeting experience. So let's look at that. We're looking at a 9-year trailing period, 2021 on the far left, back to 2013. The blue numbers, again, are in budget. You'll see in every one of those 9 years, we budgeted an operating loss. There were only 2 years where we actually experienced an operating loss, 1 year at 19,000 and one at 11,000. You would need to go back to 2009 before you would see a budget that budgeted break even or net cash flow positive budget. Budgeting is an imperfect science. The only thing I can stand here and tell you today is that the budget is wrong. I just don't know how wrong it is, in which direction it is. Closing message, if you have not yet pledged, I ask you to prayerfully consider doing so. If you have pledged and are in a position to over-deliver in your pledge, I ask you to prayerfully consider doing so. So that's it on the presentation. Happy to answer any questions. Steve.
Is there any way to adjust for the idea of money coming in from previous pledgers that is not pledgeable because of charity gift laws and foundations?
Could you elaborate on that question? Are you referring to donor advised funds? Yeah. So obviously with the change in tax law and whatever it was during the Trump administration, many large charitable givers have moved to a strategy of taking basically 2 years of charitable contributions and putting them into a donor advised fund, taking that tax deduction that year, because with the change in that tax law, the standard deduction was substantially increased. So in the next year, the family makes its charitable contributions from the donor advised fund and takes the standard deduction on their tax return. So they're able, between those 2 years, to get a larger tax deduction than had they simply itemized each year. So if we know, when we get pledge cards back, we ask if people are going to use a donor advised fund. If they are, we budget that as pledge income. If they don't tell us that, but they make a donor advised fund contribution, we have to book it as non-pledge income. But either way, it's income to the church. Is that responsive to your question?
You've addressed the mechanics. The question I have is that big 91K chunk, is there a possibility that that's because you don't see the pledge, because it can't be a pledge? Or are you taking donor advised funds money as pledges, whether or not the pledge card is being back?
I think people who have donor advised, I think people that are using donor advised funds, it is not influencing. I don't think there is a correlation between the use of a donor advised fund and the act of pledging, if that's your question. Okay, thank you. Yes?
Can you just comment on the church
Yeah, good question. And thank you, Karen, for bringing that up. The operating reserve, I believe, on the materials that were provided in the annual report was $580,000. Adding last year's surplus will bring that up to just shy of $600,000. It's actually going to go up quite a bit more because it came to our attention that there was a delay in making journal entries from the general fund to the operating reserve fund for prior year surpluses. So the operating reserve, once we make that journal entry this month in February, will go up to $700,000. I'm also glad you brought that up because to the extent the church does experience a true operating loss in 2022 or any year, the operating reserve will be used to plug that hole. Obviously, we like to add to the operating reserve. We prefer not to spend the operating reserve. I'll take more questions, but I'm pretty sure I'm over my 10 minutes.
Does have a question. Thank you, Tom. That was a ton of information. Lindsay, I'm inviting you forward just to look at specifically the partnerships unique contributions. Do you want your slide up?
Yes, I do.
Got
Thank you,
it.
Christy. And we asked for just a few minutes on the docket here to explain one of our budgets. If you read carefully through all the material, you can probably put this together for yourself, but maybe we all don't read quite as carefully as Ryan over here. And so for those of you that just skimmed, I just want to highlight a few things, because if you look at our, if you look at just the budget sheet for partnerships, you might see something, a number that looks like 59,744, and think, okay, that is the money that MIPC sent out to help the world. It is the money we use to support our local and our global partners. It is the money that we use to purchase food, to purchase sweatpants, to purchase items that our local partners need, but it's not the full story. And so we just created a few bullet points to help fill in the gaps of that story. As I've gotten the wonderful opportunity to serve both on the Partnerships Committee and on the Foundation, I've seen a much fuller picture. And it's so wonderful to see back in 1991 when the group session with a few others thought, you know what, it would be a really good idea to have an investment fund where the distributions from those investments can go straight out into the world, can further our endeavor to serve God in the world. And that has been very successful. And because of that, we were looking anywhere between high 20s and $30,000 in distributions that we are able to use in service of the world. So you see we have our operating budget that comes from our tithes, so thank you to all that have pledged. We have our foundation undesignated income, and we also have other donations that have come in from the generosity of this community. So you can see there the total cash that was given from MIPC to serve our partners, both locally and globally, was $113,109,000 that we sent out into the world. So I think that's pretty incredible to see the ways that we are sending money out into the world, but more so to see the impact. To talk with our partners at Leshai Elementary School, who are serving a very large proportion of families who are experiencing poverty, who are experiencing homelessness, who are going month by month trying not to get kicked out of their living situations, that are helping them, the school's helping them with food and with snacks for their kids and with rent assistance. To see Friends of the Children, how they are providing mentors to a lot of kids that would fall through the cracks. To see how our community was able to come along and support the sisters way over in Way, Vietnam, as they are working to serve the medical needs and the educational needs in their community, are just a few glimpses of the ways that we've gotten to see that money go out in service to the world. In addition, we saw so many items, goods and services coming in and going out through MIPC. Over the summer, there were 20 welcome baskets put together for the residents of one of Plymouth's new housing. We got to go tour that building. It is an incredible facility made intentionally to foster community among the residents that live there, and each resident was able to move in to a fully furnished and stocked apartment. And we got to take part in that by making sure that they had everything that they would need as they moved into those apartments. Debbie and Marnie and Julie and a few others have been taking carloads and carloads of perishable and non-perishable items over to Leshai. When they say, hey, we really need sweatpants this month, or we will really need snacks, or we really need more milk and butter and things that are hard to get at food banks, we've been able to say, okay, put the call out to this congregation, literally load cars full of foods and items and take it over. And the smiles on the staff's faces as they receive, as they picture the families coming to be able to get the goods that they need. I can't even share with you just how much joy everyone has. Everyone just smiling ear to ear to be able to take part in that. And just all the hours of service. When we put out a call to this congregation, I have just been so blown away by the abundant yes from you all, saying yes, and what else? What more can we do? So this is just a glimpse, but we wanted to make sure that you had an idea of, the part of the fiber of who we are is hoping to be people who can serve out in the world, who can be part of being God's hands and feet. And I think the snapshot shows that we're trying to be faithful to that call. So thank you.
This is something every year we get a chance to see if there are folks who are interested and would like to serve on our nominating committee. The nominating committee at the church is a group of people who gather, who pray together, who consider who might be the right people to serve as elders and deacons. We have 6 folks who are returning to serve the next year, but we have 1 or 2 spots that we like to have people in every class. So technically we have enough to fit by our bylaws, but it's good to have somebody serving in every class. And so I would like to open it up for folks. The things that to do this, just for you to know, is to serve on the nominating committee. That time takes place the end of summer into kind of the heavy lifting is from the end of summer to really November. We meet, we pray, we discern together, and it's helpful to know a handful of people in the congregation, and that is all. If you look at this right now and you're thinking, wow, that is a way, we asked for a 3-year commitment for that time frame. I know from year to year you're thinking, wow, this is my year. Do I have folks? Do you want to just take a moment and maybe whisper to your neighbor and go, I think you might be good? Just, look around, nod to somebody. I can come back to it after my next thing. All right, I'm going to come back to that after my next thing. Judith, can you move it to, I've got one last video. Oh, we need sound though. So, hold on.
Do you know like where his pace right now?
No, this is not good.
It's way too short. But okay, because then I just blow dry it under. I don't know, it's not perfect, but what are you gonna do? It's just here. Don't put that in, Dan. Don't put that in. He's totally putting that in.
The whole first thing is just gonna be about our bangs.
Obviously, that's the first thing.
I know it's dumb.
We're already putting it together. And this is mostly for my understanding.
Prayer of confession. And we're all in.
Sure. Chuck.
Okay. You go, take it, Dave.
We on? We're on.
Yeah, you're on.
Yeah, we're on. All right. Can this be some outtakes? All right. What do I say?
God's mercy is deeper than the depths of the sea, and God's grace is wider than the whole of the earth. Trusting in that mercy and that grace, let us make our confession before God.
This week, we are starting our MIPC hiking. Nice. Start again. Okay, start. Here's Steph Boyer to tell us something that's happening this summer. Hey friends, this summer, join your...
When you are ready.
Welcome. It is good to be with you this morning. Today, Miss Becky and I are going to talk about some of God's creative. The elements.
Okay, here it is. It's our second day. And the verse from the Bible says something really interesting. Ye shall give food to the hungry. No, I have to do it again. If you will. Oh, glasses.
I'm here to read you a story.
You think that's okay? Oh yeah, that was great.
Okay. I messed up a couple of times, but I figured, you know what, that'll be okay, right? Is that okay?
Oh, good. Nobody watches it anyway.
Thank you. Put the quiet part out loud.
Oh man, it is very good not to be doing that every week. One of the great things that we have and that has come this year is our recording that we can do live stream in this space. We've never had that before, and that is a huge thanks. That space back there was built by Christian Harrison, Robert Boatsman. They did that while the building was closed down, and one opportunity that you all have, besides nominating committee that we're just about to get back to, is to be trained to learn how to live stream. And so that is actually something I know Brian Weiss is and Sarah Gisa, they both have been trained and are doing that during worship. It's a great opportunity to serve, whether it's a memorial service or a concert or something else. It takes a bit of training, but it's a gift that you can offer in service in the congregation for quite some time. So if that is something that you are interested in, I am learning how to do it. Lindsay's learning how to do it. We would love to learn with you. And so I would love to talk to you after the meeting, after service today, and we can learn together. And then back to my nominating committee slide. If it's quiet, that's understandable. I don't want to, twist anyone's arms. But I just do want to make sure there's an opportunity, if anyone wants it, to serve on the nominating committee for the next 3 years. So I'm opening this up. Is there anyone who would like to serve on the nominating committee? And I have Janet. You did. Carol, do you accept this nomination for the nominating committee? Oh, look at that. I've got Carol Wagner. All right. Okay, and I've got any other. Marla, I know that you had sent an email. I don't know if you had gotten that back. Okay, so. Okay, yeah, see, Everett and I had a conversation, so he was going to email Marla, but you haven't gotten I'm not sure how, he's watching this right now maybe, and we want to make sure we can, I don't know how the rules of that go, pending you can't nominate unless you've confirmed. I mean, I confirmed it, but I can't, yeah. How can we do it, Judy? I see, this is where my book of order. Okay. We can undo it. Subject to his acceptance. Everett Fruling. No pressure, Everett. No pressure, Everett. Whatever camera you're looking at.
It's recorded.
We are recording. All right, that is 2 congregation at large spots. Carol Wagner, Everett Fruling. Is there any other conversation? All in favor of accepting these 2 folks for our nominating committee at large spots, say aye. Aye. All opposed, say nay. I like it. That passes. And that... This concludes our 2022 annual meeting as we celebrate and reflect back on the last year. Dan, I'm going to have you close us in prayer and then invite those who are staying, to stay for worship.
Why don't we stand? That seems appropriate. Let us pray. God, our times are in your hands. We give you thanks for your presence and your guidance in our past. We thank you for the presence we know that you will show to us in our future, and we thank you most for your presence here among us today. May we love and serve you and others as we go. We pray in Christ's name. Amen. I imagine worship will start a few minutes behind, but sooner than later. Go in peace.